And I was gonna say too, like we don't need to go a full hour if we don't get there. Like we'll just kind of let it flow and just see where we're at.
Sounds good.
Okay. Let me think how I'm gonna start this without Maddie. Okay. All right. Hey everyone, welcome to Living in the Question podcast. I'm Sadie, and there's actually no Maddie here today. So, Maddie has been traveling and just doing so much in her life that she's out traveling. And I'm like, you know what? That's okay. I can do this episode by myself. So, this is a first, everyone. I hope you're listening, and we'll see how this goes. But I'm not the only one here because we have Ariana here today. Hi, Ariana.
Hi, Sadie.
Mhm. I'm so excited to have you today for real and just to like have a real raw conversation. So I just want to talk a little bit about how came to know you and how we know each other now. So I started going to the school, as everybody knows, NKH and Non-Dual Kabbalistic Healing School. And I met Ariana through there because we were in the same class. And right immediately, I feel like we just felt drawn to each other. There's just something about our energy that we're like, yeah, we're going to be friends. Like, we just know.
It was, and I actually heard about you before we started class, which I don't know if I ever told you this story actually.
No.
When I was talking with Eileen, who, in case your listeners don't know, that's one of our teachers. I was talking with her, and she was like, "Oh, there's going to be so many wonderful people in the class." She's like, "There's this almost like 86-year-old woman, and then there's this other girl, Sadie, and she's a single mom too." And I was like, "Oh, and is she near my age?" And she's like, "Yeah, and she's near your age." And I was like, "Oh, cool." And that's how like the first introduction I had to you. So your presence was in my, I don't even know what to call it, in my energy vibe, I guess,
Oh.
before you even knew that it was. And yeah, we clicked right away. Um,
Yeah, I love that so much.
yeah.
I love that. Well, I felt like I don't know, just super excited to get to know you as well because actually Ariana's dad, Jason Schulman, is the one. You guys have heard us mention his name a couple times as well if you've listened. But that's her dad. So he started the school and I mean, I'm sure you can tell us a little bit more about that in a bit, but I don't know. I just was like, oh my gosh, like this is his daughter too. Like, what was her life like? Like, I've always been so interested and excited to hear like who you are. And so I just want to start off with a little intro about you. So I shared how I met you, but where did you grow up? What was your life story growing up? Like, who are you?
Yeah, so yeah, my dad started this school, and it was weird to tell everyone that too. I didn't start the class with telling people because I do have a different last name. I have my ex-husband's last name still. So Ariana Fort sounds very different than Ariana Schulman, but the OG is Ariana Schulman. So
The OG.
um the OG.
Love that.
So I grew up in Brooklyn, Park Slope. My parents both had me a little bit later. My dad was actually he was in music publishing, and he owned his own like music publishing company, Blue Cliff Editions.
Mhm.
And he did some other publishing, like he published like an Isaac Asimov book and like all of these different things. And he was I guess like a rock star before that. So with you know, I forget the name of his band. I think it was I don't know. But they had me a little later. I'm an only child. But they were both my mom and my dad were very like spiritual and into, I guess what you would say in the 70s were like, hippies a little bit more towards that side. So they were already kind of exploring that, I think, even before I was born in the 80s. I won't disclose my full age. But yeah, so I don't exactly remember when NKH started. It wasn't called NKH in the beginning. It was called IKH, but Integrated Kabbalistic Healing. But that change came later. But I do remember being in Brooklyn, and we moved when I was like 5 maybe. So I was little. So I had to have been like 4. And I remember that I would pretend and like bring my mom in for sessions to like give her healings.
Mhm.
Oh, I know they must have been starting to sort of do that whole world and go up to the path work and be in that realm, which is sort of like a healing community in upstate New York from when I was younger. Uh,
So what was that like to grow up in that world? Like, also, I have one question. Like, did you grow up obviously spiritual, but was there a religion involved? Like, were they, in a specific religion, or was it more like what was the spirituality you were taught?
yeah, so that's interesting because, and this will lead us into other questions too, because I was in a very different place when I started NKH than I am now. But I was raised Jewish, but not like Jewish.
Yeah.
Like my grandma was Jewish, like they were much more, they kept kosher, that sort of stuff. But my father and my mother were spiritual, and I feel like there is a really big distinction between spirituality and organized religion.
So what
Um,
is that? Can you like talk about that?
yeah, there wasn't like a forced nature to what you have to believe in.
Right.
I was introduced to a lot of different ideas, Buddhism. Obviously, I knew about Christianity. I knew about Christmas. We celebrated Christmas with friends. I love Christmas, still do. We did Hanukkah with my cousins. We did Passover. So I had a lot of different sort of hands in the pot so that there wasn't just one idea of what I was supposed to believe in or supposed to have faith in.
Hmm.
However, there was still, a lot of talk about God. There was a lot of talk about, the universe. I did have a bat mitzvah, but I wasn't like made to go to Hebrew school my whole life. I actually went back to Hebrew school. I went to Hebrew school like in second grade. We decided it was too much work. I went back in sixth grade, learned everything I had to learn, and had my bat mitzvah in seventh grade. And
Hmm.
then and
Okay.
then that was the last time I really went to temple too. So they never forced that on me. And I think that was a really good thing because it
Wow.
gave me a interesting perspective and a not as much fear about spirituality. And there are certain aspects of the Jewish religion that I really love,
Right.
but it wasn't something that was like forced
I
at
think
that
that
age.
is so beautiful because I feel like a lot, just where I grew up, right? Like that's the standard here is like people are forced to be in this Mormon religion, right? Like it's just the standard. And some of them love it and are still so in it, and some of them are like, no, which I'm one of, right? Just because of the organized religion piece, like I feel like that was pushed on me a lot to be a certain way, to feel a certain way about myself. If I did something wrong, if I drank coffee, I'm supposed to feel guilty. And like, you need to feel the guilt and like the sorrow. And it's like, but what if I don't? I
Well,
had this whole moment of that, of what if I don't feel guilty? Like, I don't think that's so bad. And my dad was that way, but not my mom. So, like,
yeah,
I feel so happy for you that you were able to be like raised in this culture of like, you can be who you want to be. And did you feel that way?
I did. I just was going to bring up that I think the guilt portion, it goes like it spreads across the world in every religion
Right?
because my grandmother definitely had that, like that sort of guilt of, you know, you didn't eat all your food,
Yeah.
like if you should be thankful for things. So I do think that kind of spreads across it. But no, I didn't really feel guilt. Of course, like I might have felt it in other ways, or, we all have expectations. Our parents have expectations for us, but mine weren't like, you have to be this. They were actually extremely supportive of anything that I wanted to be in life, um, which I can't say for a lot of parents. But they also worked on themselves every single day. Like healing is a daily journey.
Mhm.
So, and they live and breathe that,
Mm.
both of them really,
Yeah.
uh,
Oh, I
even
love
to
that.
this day. So.
I love that. I love what you just said about how healing is a daily journey, and I'm writing it down because it's so true. And also, there's no end all be all, right? I think sometimes that's the problem too with organized religion is like there's this place to be at, and if you're not there, then you're not. you're not the highest of them all. You know what I mean? Like it's just I don't know. So I feel like do you think that that was what's my question? I'm like I have so much going on in my head. Do you feel like that was hard in any way to grow up with parents who were always constantly like working on themselves? Like it sounds beautiful and great, but I'm sure or was there, right? Like those hard moments of like, dang, I don't feel like I want to do that. And here's my parents that are doing that all the time. Like how was that for you?
So I think, yeah, like you said, I think it was like good and bad.
Yeah.
I think the good part is that they were very forgiving and they would say, I'm sorry. Like if they did something wrong, they were like really good at letting me know what was not my fault. Like
Mm-hmm.
what was mine and what was not mine. So I didn't have to carry their burdens or their issues. You know, it could be a separate thing. Like I could empathize with it, or I don't really like the word sympathize, but as a kid, I think sometimes you more sympathize because you don't really know how to fully empathize yet. Um, you know, at that point. But um, but at the same time, I mean, it made me like the kid who had weird parents. So it was like, so that part was hard, to understand like my dad meditating all the time, or the fact that like he would get startled. He'd go into like really deep, I don't think he'd mind me saying this, into really deep meditations, and I wouldn't quite realize it. So I'd startle him, and then he'd scream, and then I'd scream, and then it was like a whole mess, which would happen all the time. So it's like on that aspect, it wasn't as understood. Like I wasn't as conscious about what they were really doing.
Right.
Like I had like sort of this surface level idea of what they were really doing. And as I got a little older, I kind of pushed it all away anyway, because, I realized very quickly that if you try to explain what my dad does, for example, hugging trees, to a bunch of, fifth graders at a private school that you go to in the middle of Hunterdon County, New Jersey, or I wasn't even in Hunterdon County then, I was a little farther away, but
Mm-hmm.
that you don't always get the response, and so that was always hard. That aspect of it was hard.
Right.
A lot of people were like, "Oh, you're in a cult."
Yeah. Yes, which can we talk about, please? I'm so glad you just brought that up because people would say that in the school. Like I've heard people kind of make those comments or on podcasts, right? Like that Tim was on. Like I used to listen to other people say that. Like that kind of sounds like a cult. And it's like how do you explain the difference, right?
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't even explain what my dad did most of my life. And now that I've been through the school, like I don't even know how to fully explain it to people that
Yes,
I
thank
see.
you.
For me as a child, obviously, NKH, it's sort of originally branched from a Society of Souls. So that was like the original name that my dad had for the whole school. Now it's a nonprofit, so it's the Foundation for Non-Dual Healing. It's a little different. It sounds a little bit more like grounded and a little bit less like in the air, I guess, is the feeling that I get. Society of Souls. So saying that to people, it really gave like the culty vibe, unfortunately, to my fifth grade friends. I want to like put that out there to your listeners. People who are doing self-work, people who are older, people who have experienced life, they would hear that name and they would absolutely know that there was more meaning behind it. I'm talking about like as a fifth grader. Um, but
Right.
but yeah, but what is the difference, right?
Well, I mean, I don't feel like it's a cult.
It's not.
Like
It's
nothing's
not.
pushed on you.
No.
It's so like, here's this is how I feel, right? Which might be off, but I'm just gonna say it. I feel like it has this feeling of everyone come be as you are, and let's give you these beautiful teachings and principles and healing work, right? That's all based also in science. Like it's not any someone's belief that they've now pushed on everyone. It's a completely different thing. It's like, here's all this information about this really deep healing work, and come as you are. If you fuck up, great. Like, all the better. Like, and just keep going and let's support each other and be there for each other and keep diving into this really deep work that, at the beginning, like when I would hear people talk about, oh, is it a cult? Like, I would get worried sometimes in myself of like, okay, here we go. Like at the beginning of like, what are we going into, But over the 4 years, I truly feel like it's completely transformed how I feel about it, especially because too, I'm experiencing it. Like my whole entire life has shifted because of the school. And yeah,
Yeah. I mean, I think I agree with you. It's obviously not, I know it's not a cult.
yeah.
Um, there's nothing that's pushed on or believed, and there is a lot of quantum physics involved, which
Mhm.
goes a little bit over my brain
Mhm.
level. But I do believe that there's just a overall, because we set, okay, how do I put this? NKH is very much, I feel, about how integrated and close we actually are as humans,
Mm.
and not so individualistic and not even collectivist. It's like bigger than that. It's like at the molecular level of how we are connected to another person. And I think that can be terrifying for people, that idea. And so I think that they go to the only thing that they can associate it with, which is my identity being taken away, which means a cult.
Yeah.
But it's not that. Like it's much more
Mhm.
about finding, in my opinion, I feel like I've gained so much more individualness in myself, and I I am more myself
Yes.
than who I was when I first came in. Like it was a little wishy-washy. I was also going through hard things in life, but
Yeah. I want to
you
talk about that though. Like, where were we when we started? Like, that's something we have in common that we're both pretty passionate about, is this like
know,
beautiful form of healing. And I don't know, I think it would be interesting for our listeners to hear us going through the same school, like where we started and where we are now and what has shifted. So let's talk about that. Like, who were you before?
oh my goodness. Oh, okay. Yeah, I don't mind sharing about it actually. So I was barely a human. I was in the midst of going through a really traumatic separation that was not decided by me. Definitely for the best. It was getting really abusive. It was getting really scary. My ex ended up bringing this other person, leaving me with. He wouldn't let me say leaving. He wouldn't say let me say I left. He left for someone else. He made me say I left with someone else because it's weird.
Yeah.
But about 2 years, I completely became a shell of myself. I was trying to get him back into my life. I had PTSD. It was really bad. Um, I was trying to be as whole of a person as I could be for my children who were also going through this and going through a hard time while there was really nothing left of me. So I decided to, after 2 years, to go back for my master's. And then I found out that Eileen and Jeff, this was going to maybe be one of the last New York area NKHs. And I had always like kind of thought about going to do this. Um, Even though, like I said, I pushed it away a lot of my life. But I was like, all right, I'm going to do this. I think it would go really good hand in hand with going for my master's in clinical mental health.
Mm.
I think I could really have like a more holistic approach to
Right.
it. So when I came in, I was super uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Like I was super uncomfortable, and everything we did was about being in discomfort. And it wasn't just that. It was like I had a lot of weirdness with the word God.
Mm.
Almost to the point where I would feel like I don't know if you remember, like we had this, I don't know, we were doing some sort of meditation or something, and there was the word God, or we had to think about, God, and I would feel like physically sick. Like I couldn't sit with the word God, even the word God, the idea of God.
What is that? Why do you think that is? Like, what is that just from being raised in such a spiritual household and like,
I think it was more of the resistance of religion.
Mm.
and the idea of what religion means.
Right, right, right. Okay.
Because there's so many parts of organized religion that are beautiful, and there's so many parts of it to me that are not.
Hmm.
Um, and there's a lot of, I also was with my ex was not spiritual at all. He would
Mm.
come to Passover and things like that with me, and he would do Christmas or whatever, but he was not a spiritual person. And he really kind of was like mean if anyone ever thought, or if I was like, oh, this is like a spiritual thing, or like I'm feeling, I'm praying to something, even if it wasn't a God, he would kind of always like belittle me about it. So I think there was just, I had kind of like, I don't know, boomerang to the other end of the spectrum of that. I think that's where that comes from.
Okay. Okay. That makes sense.
So yeah, I don't know, I couldn't sit in my discomfort.
Hmm.
I didn't like the word God.
Hmm.
I was a shell of a person. Sounds great. It gets better.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, and I want to talk about where we are now, but I want to share too, like where I was, because I think
where
we
were
have
you?
a whole
Where were
distinction.
you?
Um, where was I? That's how I felt. Like, where was I? You know? Like, I
Mm,
feel like I showed up just being like, okay, here's all my trauma. What the hell do I do with it? Like, here's all my stuff right here. And the reason I decided to start the school was because Tim, right? I was hearing his podcast just about how much this had changed his life. And I did healings with him for probably 3 years before the school. And then I just started to be like, holy shit, this is real and this is so beautiful. And I'm so intrigued. And I'd always wanted to be in the therapy world, but I didn't know what that looked like. Like I tried to take regular psychology and, all of those things in college. And like I liked it, I was interested in it, but it felt like a huge piece was missing. So I
mm,
came in just being like, okay, this has to be that piece. Like it feels like that. And so, yeah, but I feel like I was right in the middle of a lot of shit. Like my dad was living with me,
mm,
which is wild to think about. Like he was living with me. Like I was dealing with a lot of bullshit with my ex too. And the fact that I just moved away and I'm a single mom now. And I was right in the midst of all of this hard stuff. And it just happened to be that the school just was there and I had to do it. And I'm so glad that I did because I do feel like a totally different person. And like I think I used to live my life people pleasing a lot,
mm.
pleasing a lot of other people, and also letting a lot of people's energy in. Like I'm such an empath that like I would suck it in and make it mine and try to fix. And I had no idea who I was.
Yeah, I think I was similar. I never really labeled myself as an empath, but I did always pick up other people's energies. I feel like what made me a good actor, like when I was doing acting, because I could just sort of like take that on. But I never like labeled myself that way, but I think I was similar too. That like I didn't really have firm boundaries with energy.
Yeah.
I also gave all my energy. I was just like, oh, you need something? Like here. I mean, they can't see my hands, but I'm making like a pouring a jug type move. I don't know.
Mhm. Yes. Yeah. Like having no space for you too, right?
Oh yeah, no. I mean, there wasn't even a space that should have been a space. It was just I was everyone else at that point.
Right. Yeah. So what's changed for you? Like, okay, I just want to tell everybody we graduate in 2 months.
I know. I can't
It's
believe
so
it. Oh my,
wild.
four
It's been,
years.
yeah, it's been a journey of 4 years. And we like the whole first year, I feel like was just like baseline, breaking down all of the things we've learned and getting to who am I, right? Starting to be curious about that. And I feel like that already transforms you so much. But now here we are, like doing such deep meditations and like truly been practicing doing healings for 3 years. Like, I don't know. Who do you feel you are now? Like, what has changed? That's a big question
No,
because it's a lot.
that is a really big question. Well, who am I now? I'm someone who's still on a journey. Um, for sure.
Mhm.
Um, but someone I am is someone who can question themselves, I feel like. I feel like NKH has helped me notice little things about myself and be able to sit with it
Yes.
and not necessarily seek an answer, which is a scary thing to be in sometimes. However, because sometimes I'm just tired and can I curse? I just want the fucking answer.
Yes, you can.
But, you know,
Yeah.
but it's allowed me to know that it's okay if I don't get that answer right away. It's okay if I'm sitting in the unknown. It's okay if I'm sitting in the discomfort. I know how to sit in this discomfort. I know how to keep putting my feet on the ground and not float off if I don't have an answer. I
Right.
do think part of it is that, in NKH, when you're giving the healings, you're also getting the healings. So I think over these 4 years, we've also been just getting a lot of healings, which have helped, in
Mhm.
addition to just like learning the material,
Right.
because there's so much material. And I absolutely, we have some repeat takers in our class. And at the very beginning, and I was like, well, what didn't they pay attention to? And now
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, I need to do this again.
Yes, because it
You
is
know,
like that. It's so deep too, like things that you haven't like fully dove into, right? About literally the chemical makeup of us. And you know what I mean? Shifting those little patterns and just so, and the universe. Like I love what you talked about at the beginning because that's something that's changed for me in a huge way, is I feel so interconnected to everything. Like I can go outside now and I like look up at the sky and I'm just like, oh my gosh, like all these things are like vibration, like everything is living particles and like the trees and like noticing the little leaves on the tree. Like I feel so much more in my body. And I think I used to live a lot of my life like spinning in my head and being so overwhelmed by life coming at me, right? And so it would create this like anxiety and just like I don't know how to handle any of it, but just like you said, like it's done that for me too, of just being able to be in the uncomfortable and being not necessarily comfortable there, but being able to hang out there just a little bit longer until you can't. And then it's okay to step back a little bit. And I think that too is like the compassion, having
yeah.
compassion for the places you don't want to go, or maybe the resistance that shows up, being aware that, oh, I'm resisting this thing but I'm not scared to dip my toe in, right?
Yeah, well, I mean, and that's something that in class they have us do so much is like talk about our resistance,
Mm,
right? I've never been someplace that you like when they ask you how you are, you raise your hand, you say, "Well, I don't feel like being here."
yeah.
And and the teacher isn't like, "Okay, well then leave."
Yeah,
You know.
everyone's like, there, me too, you know.
Yeah. And that
Yeah.
it really does, I don't know, it really does bring a level of just community. And if it's more than that, I don't have a word for it really, but just honesty, I get, and realness, whatever that means.
Authentic, like just being
Authenticity,
authentic
yeah,
where
something
you
like that.
are. Uh-huh.
Yeah, like there's no shame.
Mm.
We were talking about earlier a little bit, but like there's this idea that like there's nothing to be, you didn't understand the healing, you had difficulty with it, no shame.
Right.
You don't want to be there today, you're having a really hard time, no shame. You share and you start sobbing, no shame.
Mm.
Um, you had something really great happen and but other people didn't,
Yeah.
no shame. Like no anything. It's just real.
Yeah, and I think a big part of it too is this like transference, right? I've talked about
Mm.
transference a lot on this podcast, but that's something they introduced to us the first year too. And I'm still, figuring out what that fully is. And I think we will be forever because I don't know. I just feel like that piece specifically has made the space so safe to be who you are, is the fact that everyone is aware of, oh, this person's triggering me, and they sit with that instead of putting it on everyone else. Like it's like, oh, I know this is mine and let me be with it, and then meet this person where they are. And you don't see that out in the world. It's not like you go to the grocery store and someone, you have an interaction and they're that way. Like everybody is so baseline just triggered all the time by what's coming at them. But it's like if you can really be seated in yourself and be, can you hear my dog barking?
No.
Okay, good, because he's going ham out there. Like, sorry, Tish, cut that part out. Okay, but if you can really just like be in your own self, I truly think that the way you experience the world is a whole, you have a whole fresh new perspective, and like life is so different. And that's how I feel. That's what I feel like it's really changed for me.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think you said it really, really perfectly.
Yeah.
Just getting to be who you are and that being okay and being good, you
Yeah.
know, and then being able to hold that for other people too, because there is like a difference between doing a healing session and like a therapy session, or even just doing somatic work. I mean, there's somatic therapy now. It's not just talk therapy, but this is like an even deeper level than that since it's dealing, I said it before, the molecular level, right? This idea of like inside and outside, this idea of like everything having, well, you'll know what I'm talking about, but having like making space solid, that everything is tangible almost, and it's different. I don't know what I'm trying to say.
No, I know exactly what you're saying, but everyone's probably confused. So what we're gonna say is just the whole thing of like non-duality, right? Like holding both, like being able to recognize that like the space around us is like floating space, and also like everything is solid in its own way too. Like it's both. It's
Yeah.
okay for you to feel super angry and also a piece of you want to be happy and feel a little bit of like joy too, right? Or yeah, being able to be, it's the transference thing, being able to be super triggered in yourself at some how somebody is presenting to you, and then also be kind to them. Like being
Yeah,
able to hold both and know that that's okay, right? Yeah.
it is okay. I love the word and now, right?
Mm.
I use it in sessions all the time. I'm like, you can be happy and sad. You can be jealous, angry, and jealous. I'm like, you have to have, it's always and, you can't have one or the other. And it's really transformed how like I think about the world,
Yeah.
really, and life. Um, Not always perfect with it. Sometimes I want to just have a tantrum and just be
Yeah. And
sad, but
sometimes,
even right, but even when I stop to think about it, it's never just that.
mm,
And if I might want it to be.
mm,
But
right.
oh, I mean, I've learned a lot from NKH. I feel like there's so much to learn. I feel like I could have even learned more.
Mm. Yes, I know. I feel like I need to go back through all the videos and watch them all again because it's just so deep, like you were saying. I get why people t have taken the class again.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I feel like it would absolutely just ground me even more, put me even deeper into myself. But then I look at my dad, who's 78 now, and that he's still doing this every day. He's still going deeper. He's going like it doesn't end. Like it doesn't end, which sounds terrifying, but
No,
also beautiful.
but it's real. Like that's something I want to sit, like talk about a little bit too. It's just like people think that there's this place where you're healed and you're just healed and you're enlightened and you're an enlightened being. And I love how they talk about it in the school because they say enlightening or I'm
Mhm.
healing. Like it's never I'm fully healed. Like as humans on this earth, it's our job to experience these things, right? That's why we're here is to keep healing, keep working through the stuff. That's like our human nature. So I love the compassion of, and also the humbleness of you're never fully healed. Like even our teachers who have been doing this for how long? Like they still are constantly working on themselves too. And I think that's a beautiful thing to recognize because a lot of people, I think, feel very intimidated by healing work because they think, right, that, like, how will I ever get to that?
Yeah, or even what is that,
Yeah, yeah.
because it's going to be different for each person and each person's journey is different and because we are blessed to still be living every day. It means that there's going to be new traumas, there's going to be new heartache, there's going to be new shadow memories that come to the surface, there's going to be new transgenerational stuff that comes, just depending on what happens on a daily basis. So it's like just pure that. healing has to, continue,
Mm. Yeah.
you know.
So that's something I want to touch on too. Um, okay, well, tell everybody what you do for work. And let's go into that because you just mentioned like trauma and like that everyone has that. And, I want to talk about that.
Yes, everyone does have trauma, but everyone's trauma is different. What's trauma to one person may not be any sort of way, shape, or form trauma for another. Like I said, when I went back for my master's, I went for clinical mental health. I graduated. I got my LAC, which is the license to do it, so I can do it legally. And I work at a women's halfway house in New Jersey. Um, yeah, I
Yeah.
found people don't know what a halfway house is because, like, one thing I thought myself when I went into a halfway house setting, I had no idea. I
I
knew the
still
word.
kind of feel that way. I'm like, I've heard of halfway houses. I know some cousins that have been in halfway houses, but like, I don't know like what the environment is like what, you
So
know?
a lot of people I think get confused and think a halfway house is like more like a sober living or like a flop house even maybe. I know that sounds horrible, but I really do think people think it's like a flop house with like needles outside the door and things like that. And that's not the case. It is treatment. It
Yeah.
is legal treatment. It comes right after someone was in short-term or long-term rehab. It is for people who are having just a really hard time staying sober, people who can't just walk into meetings for AA or NA and stay clean, stay sober. It's for people who have gone through IOP, intensive outpatient, detox, and it's just something's not clicking. They need something at a little bit of a higher level of care, but also at the same time, this sounds weird, at like a lower level of care because they're more responsible when they're there.
Mhm.
So we have about 15 women who live in the house. It's in like this old Victorian. I think ours is the best halfway house in New Jersey. Just saying.
Yeah.
But every single person who's there, even if they say, "Oh no, I don't have any trauma. I don't have any trauma," they all have something that has happened. And
Mhm.
it's a hard world. It's a very hard world to work in. When I say, I can't obviously disclose too much, but when I say that I get a client and I'm like, wow, the trauma cannot get worse than this, and
Mhm.
then someone with worse trauma comes in, it happens every single day. Every
Mhm.
single day. It's stuff of movies. It's like they write it and put it in movies because they think, well, this can't possibly have actually happened. Like this is too horrible. Let's put it in a movie. But it's not that. Like
Yeah.
happened to these women.
That would be so hard. Like for me personally, I was talking about how I'm an empath and like, like, yes, I want to help people in that way, right? But like the amount of it, and also I think I have my own addictive tendencies. We all do, right? But with substances, like, yeah, there's been times where I smoke too much weed and I'm not stopping, It's like there's been moments in my life like that where I have that in me. So to be like working in it, I think would be like not hard for my own addiction because I feel like I've done a lot of work in that way, but just about how much I would want to help them. But like you can't change it for them, right? Like it's on them. So
Yeah.
how is that for you? Because that would be so hard for me.
It is the hardest part, actually.
Yeah.
I've just actually started talking with some of my clients and saying the full phrase to them. I do not work harder than my clients.
Mm,
And that sounds awful as like a thing to, as a therapist to say to someone. But the truth is that I cannot keep them sober.
mm,
Um, I lost a client to an overdose. Gosh, it's probably like 4 months ago, maybe 4 months ago now. Um, I loved this client, loved her. She decided that she thought she was going to be better at a sober living. We were doing some deeper work around some loss that she had. And I think it was 2 days. She wasn't found for a while, but it was 2 days until she was back with her dealer and she OD'd. So usually what I found though is that they usually mentally relapse far before the substance relapse
mm,
happens. And that's really hard to watch.
Yeah.
because I'll see it from the outside, all these small little things that they're not following through with anymore, that they're not caring about, that they're skirting around. Because we work on everything. We work on physical health. They have to work full-time jobs, so they're back in the workforce. We budget all their money with them. So in this capacity, I'm not just the primary counselor. I also do all the work with DCP&P. I work with recovery court. I work with the lawyers. I work with their public defenders. I work with everything. Social work, case management. And you start to see little bits and pieces, them not calling their network, them not calling their sponsor, them not going out. And you want to shake them. And then you remember it's not ethical to shake your client and you can't do anything about it. So, you know.
Yeah, but it is, right? Like it's a slippery slope. And so I love what we were talking about earlier as healing is an everyday practice. Like healing is an everyday, daily journey. And like you just have to keep working at it and keep having, the heart, mind, intention, if you will, to just keep going, right? And a lot of people know on this podcast, I lost my dad to suicide. So, and also he was having his own mental health issues and addiction issues. And so I get it. It is a slippery slope and that is freaking scary, but also all we can do is to keep pushing and like keep moving forward and keep being proud of ourselves for making it another day and trying, having the intention to do better because I truly feel like that's all you can do, right?
That's all you can do. And this is going to sound so corny, but just to remind anyone in your life that you've had love for, have love for, and for yourself, like that you need to be proud of the things you do accomplish and to have hope and heart, right? Because I talked about that shame, I talked about that guilt that runs deep.
Yeah.
And there's not always a lot of help. I know about your dad and your loss, and that was so hard to hear that you had to go through that because I know how little help there is out there. It seems like, oh, we'll just call a suicide hotline. Well, no, they don't pick up. Just call the crisis center. They're all burnt out. It's like there's not enough help out there. And then when I think about the idea of like NKH and how that can help on that level, it's like, well, maybe this is another way to work with people. Like the healing, I probably can't talk about the exact healings, but the advanced healing that we had just learned about patterns, I immediately thought of the addiction community. I immediately thought of people who had a lot of suicidal ideation patterns, but knew about those patterns and wanted to change them, but just didn't know how, and how this type of work could actually like really benefit this community.
Yeah,
Um,
because it heals on that deep of a level. It's like it goes
mhm.
below the triggers and all the stuff. It's like getting to the root cause of like what's going on and maybe helping shift those things that we've been so stuck in for so long, right? So I think that's so beautiful. And I was gonna ask you something, but I can't remember now. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, it is beautiful because and that's something I hold in session. I don't do client healing sessions. We're not at that point. We will be there soon, couple months. But the idea of that, we're all born perfect. We're all born as just goodness.
Yeah,
And
and like
remember
divine
that,
being.
that's still in there.
Mm.
And then remind ourselves that every day too, right? I mean, again, I know it sounds a little like hippy dippy, but you know, it's not. So it's something we all actually need to do and be a little kinder to
Yeah.
ourselves and to others. So
100%. And just keep going. Anyone out there struggling, just keep going. But I
yeah.
did remember what I was going to ask you. Like, so what is that like trying to mesh these two worlds of everything you've learned in NKH and now this like structured, probably like treatment plan, right? That you have to like help them with or certain type of therapy you have to do. How is that meshing both those worlds together? And
Oh,
it's
I mean,
hard to like
yeah.
bring that into your job. Are you allowed to, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's met with a little resistance for
Uh-huh.
sure. Um, and it's hard, yeah. I mean, I in session obviously have time to work with these people, but it's only an hour and they're with us about 6 months. So it's not even that long. But, I want to do the trauma work. I want to do the NKH work. I want to be able to hold this space and do these healings and sort of work at that deeper level that I feel they really need because I think that's one of the reasons it didn't work before. They throw them on tons of medications. They don't know how to be on those medications, monitor those medications. They don't know how to actually like use their coping skills. But it is hard. Like I feel like a lot of the stuff in the halfway house setting is also money based.
Mm.
It's about getting people in, getting the funding, and then the funding runs out and they get kicked out, whether they have a place to go or not.
Right.
So I think like deeper work could be done if we really went from more of like a holistic and trauma-informed standpoint, um, and kind of met. I think you had said something like this when we were talking about when we are sharing like an NKH, but like just meeting the client where they're at instead of like thinking there's this like formula that's going to get them from point A to point B.
Yeah, just kind of letting them be where they are too, and like letting them know there's also divinity in that, right? Like
Yeah.
you
And
are right now is actually showing up for you so you can see it maybe, right? Or make little shifts or having compassion for where they are. Like I think too, a lot of addicts, like a lot of their family has pushed them away.
mhm.
It's like we can't deal with them. They're not doing the right thing, like all of that. Like all we need is a little bit of compassion. Everyone needs that and a little bit of support and to hear that you can keep going, right?
You can keep going that there's a big difference between, and I don't take credit for this, this came from Brene Brown, um, that, the difference between guilt, which is I did something bad, like, oh, I did drugs, I did something bad, I had a suicidal thought, that was not great, and shame, which is like, I am bad.
Mm.
And eventually, and I feel like NKH addresses the healings in NKH address those core beliefs that we don't even know we have anymore of I am bad. I am dishonest. I am an addict. We have to say that sometimes, but like that core belief and there's nothing else. Like it's so black and white. And I feel that NKH and those healings from having experienced them, works on a level that you don't have to work so hard, like as the healee,
Yeah.
it can just adjust everything. And I don't know, I think it could be so beneficial. I
Hmm.
would love to do like a PhD research on
Yeah.
like NKH in the addiction community.
Yeah, that would be interesting. Yeah. Oh my gosh, I love that. Well, I have completely loved this conversation, and I feel like we just have talked about some real things, and I'm just glad that we were able to do this together.
Yeah, me too. I don't get to talk about it that much outside of either NKH stuff in class or therapy and all of that in the halfway house. So to kind of talk about it together with you has been really amazing. And plus, just getting to see you outside of class
I
is always a thing.
know.
We don't do it as much as we should, and I miss your face, so it's good.
No, I miss you. We should do a healing together soon. Let's do
Yeah,
it.
absolutely. I would love that.
Me too. Maybe tomorrow.
Yeah, I only have 1 hour where I have to go learn jump rope choreography for my daughter who can't be there.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
leave it
Great.
at that.
I love that. Well, thank you, Ariana. And is there anything else you want to share? Like, just for the people who are listening, like, is there anything you want to say or like,
Um,
yeah, you don't want to talk about or
no, just that, you don't have to go unseen if there's something that you want to be seen about. And that if you meet people or they meet you in your story with empathy and kindness and non-judgment, there's no home for shame there. And you can, just start to live with whatever life you really want to live, I guess is all I want to say to people.
oh,
To
I love
love themselves, love yourself.
Yep. Don't beat yourself up. We're all
Yeah,
human,
don't
you
don't
know?
do it.
Don't do
It's
it.
too
It's not fun.
tiring. Too tiring.
Right. It is tiring. Who has time for that?
Yeah, there's no time. No time. Of
I love you, Ariana. Thank you so much. And is
course. Thank
there
you.
anywhere that, an Instagram that you have or something, if people are interested in like what you do or seeing who you are, like, do you want to share those things?
Yeah, well, my Instagram is literally just my personal Instagram, so that's just gonna stay my own because it
Okay.
has my kids on it. But if anybody wants to get in touch with me or has any questions about halfway house settings or even anything, they have family who um, have a family member that's suffering from addiction or anything like that, and you just don't know what steps to take with them, or if you have any questions about NKH, we both can point you in the right direction for that one. But my email is arianafort83@gmail.com.
Love it. And I will have that in the show notes so that everybody can see that and, send you a message. And Ariana is the most beautiful, sweet, just like genuine person. So if you feel pulled to reach out to her, please do, because she's great.
And I'm really good at writing back.
Yeah.
I am, yeah, I'm really good at
Yeah,
it.
you are. You're good. Oh my gosh. Well, thank you so much for coming, and I love you.
I love you too. Thank you for having me.
Of course, appreciate you. Thanks for listening, everyone. I hope that everybody has a good couple of weeks. Bye.